Culture. England is a very interesting place culturally because it's moving in a very secular direction and has been in the past 10, 20 years. Yet again, there are a lot of culture that are still instilled in the people. For example, the English always, or the British always want to be proper as we say it. And you can see that in small snippets of life. For example, the English are very good with their knives and the forks. I mean, here in the States, we usually kind of just use the fork just to eat. Maybe if we're eating a steak, we'll use a knife. But in England, it's always two hands, and they just go at it. It's left and right, left and right. So that's a interesting snippet of culture that you can still see of their properness coming through in modern life. You know, some of you may be asked to learn how to drive in England, and it's definitely an experience. Because England, from what I gather, has one of the hardest driving exams in the world. I remember in the States, you know, the night before my practical test, my mom was like, "Son, you should learn how to parallel park." I said, "Mom, I got this. I can imagine it in my head. You just go back it up, you turn right and turn left, and just real quick, just park in that spot." And the next day I was the practical, and after 2 tries, the examiner was just stop it. There's people behind you, and I still passed the exam in the States. In England, that will not happen. That will not happen. If you touch the curb one time, or just the point system is much more difficult. The written test is a 2-part. There's a visual part you have to click to make sure your reaction is right. So learn how to parallel park in the States if you can, or wherever you're from, because you will. Yeah, and it's very expensive in England. So it's not the most important thing, but a fun fact / thing to do to prepare to come to England. You will learn how to use a map and take the bus, because that's what you will do for 2 years or 1.5 years for the sisters. And wow, that was a very interesting experience. I wish I paid better attention during Boy Scouts, during the orientation merit badge. So that's definitely something I have to get accustomed to take the buses. But then again, you know, you're in a confined space. There are people who are not members of the church. What do? You talk to them to the gospel. So if you think preaching the gospel is awkward on a street where there's open space, just imagine how awkward it may be inside a confined space such as a bus. But if one could preach the gospel in a confined space, could bus contact, a person could do anything with another person. That is just the refiner's fire for interpersonal communication. So you will come back and they should just have a 16-credit exam you could take to get a communications class. It definitely felt like, as a missionary, the British people were very into their holidays. Maybe not so much maybe the religious aspect that's tied with it, but definitely the festivity. It's definitely celebrated there. Actually, yeah, definitely. Now I remind during Christmas time, it's really all out. I mean, it's what you expect here in the States, but as well a bit more. In England, during Christmas, I remember there are toys. I forgot what it's called, but it's kind of shaped like a big candy, and there's 2 handles at the end, and 2 people pull, and a prize would come out, and you know, and I think it would come out to one side or something like that. So people always wish that they would get the one side with the prize, and inside there is usually a paper crown, and you put on your head during your Christmas meal. So that's a festive part. British lifestyle. Let's see. I think living in England really helped me appreciate America, because a lot of times it's easier to contrast, to say, hey, for example, you know, America and China is completely different. America and Brazil is completely different, and if you factor in the language and the culture. But whereas England, it's a lot closer. I mean, other than Canada, of course, although we speak the same language and we mostly have the same roots, or a lot of times have the same roots, the standard of living is completely different. To give a contrast, for example, steak here in the States is like what, $5, $6, $7 a pound. But in England, if you kind of convert it back to U.S. currency, a steak would be $12, $13, $14 a pound. So with that, life is a lot more expensive than England. In England, soccer in England or in the UK is going to be called football, and sometimes you talk to people on the street, you ask them what they believe. Sometimes they get a bit smart alecky and they tell you, I believe in football. And you think they're kidding, but really football or soccer is really big in the UK. If you ever served in Manchester, there's a possibility that you may live in an apartment that could actually, it's about a block or two behind the United, what is that called? The United Team Stadium, Man U Stadium. And it's funny because it's so big that on game days, one, the bus route changes just to accommodate the buckets of people coming to this arena, and two, because we had to have this special permit to park in front of our place, but one reason or another, we couldn't get that permit. So on game days, we actually have to park our own car in the nearest chapel and walk back to our apartments. So maybe because of that, I'm not the biggest game of football, but definitely football is a big thing in England, and it's very difficult trying to speak to people when it's the World Cup or a big game is going on. The World Cup, like mentioned before, it's a big deal and everybody's watching it, and we're actually fortunate to allow to watch an hour of it or a match. We could pick our team because about half our missionaries are international, and yeah, sometimes we have to adjust our schedules according to it. Maybe if there's a big matches going on, that's when we're going to take our dinner or lunch breaks, because no one's going to want their doors to be knocked on during those times. And they did have a few Olympic matches in the Man U Stadium, Manchester United Stadium, where I live pretty close. And you could hear the cheer, and we were doing planning, but we were to keep our head down and do the work.